Hello guys, we continue talking about emotional regulation and our assumptions and beliefs about emotions. Today we're going to talk about shame and guilt. Many of us have shame or guilt about different feelings or way we behave when we feel a certain way, and this oftentimes comes from childhood. And some people even have shame of just being themselves or deep core beliefs that I am a horrible person, or I am bad, or I am evil, or something like this. For such core beliefs, you can check my playlist called Basic Cognitive Skills and Intermediate Cognitive Skills. There is all the necessary information and practices. And today in particular, we're going to talk about our shameful or guilty assumptions about emotions. Like, many of us don't get validated when we feel a certain way in our childhood. Like, for example, if you're a boy and you cry, you're gonna get shamed for this. You're gonna be shamed because you're gonna be said that why you crying like a girl and all this. If you are a girl and you get angry, you're gonna get shamed for this as well. Or for example, if your parents are always like pessimistic and upset and just feeling down, and you are feeling happy, you might feel ashamed for that. Or maybe you might feel ashamed for feeling joyful because you have this idea, deep belief that you need to be punished, you are a bad person. So this question of shame and guilt literally goes in so many directions. I invite you to think about your own experience. Which emotions cause you to feel guilt or shame? Or which absence of emotions cause you to feel guilt or shame? Because, for example, we can feel ashamed for absence of emotions. Like, for example, something bad happened, like, I don't know, somebody died, and you don't feel miserable. And you might feel ashamed that you don't feel miserable, that I'm supposed to feel horrible, but I don't. And shame yourself for this. So first of all, write down which emotions or which absences of emotions lead you to feeling ashamed. And next one is, how did you find out that this particular emotion is shameful? Try to remember this episode from your childhood, or maybe you will remember several episodes, how this emotion became shameful. For example, you lived in a family where a parent or grandparent was sick, so feeling joyful while they are sick leads to shame. Okay. Or for example, in childhood, when you were angry, your parents would shame for that, so anger makes you feel ashamed. Or maybe you grew up in some kind of household where they never talk about sex or romantic love or something like that, so when you feel such attraction, you feel ashamed about it, especially if you are not in heterosexual, if you are not heterosexual. Many of such people feel ashamed about their own feelings. And then also ask yourself which emotions you are not ashamed of, and ask yourself, why is that? Why? How did you learn that these emotions are okay? And oftentimes we find that, for example, boys are ashamed to cry, they're ashamed of sadness, they're ashamed to feel sad, miserable, lonely, and all that, but they're not ashamed of feeling angry, for example. So this is really important. This is your first exercise. Please feel free to pause the video, write it down, and then return. Next one is, ask yourself, does it help me? Does shaming myself for this emotion actually help me? Oftentimes we might find different beliefs. Like, for example, if I do not shame myself for this emotion, I will not be able to control it. Like, only like this I can control my emotion. And this is of course not true. You can not shame yourself for your emotions. you can accept your emotions and still be able to control your behaviors. So you don't need shame to control something. On the contrary, when you feel ashamed about something, you are not able, you might be in denial when this emotion appears, and you might lie to yourself like, oh no, I don't feel jealous, I don't feel jealous, jealousy is shameful. And this way you don't notice this emotion in time, and you try to avoid it, and then it's exploding. Okay, so oftentimes it's better to not be ashamed of emotions, because then you can clearly see them without avoidance. And another idea about why people might find it useful to be ashamed is that, for example, you have a depression and you feel sad, and you have this idea that if I accept my sadness, it would mean I give up. It would mean I will become even more depressive. So instead, I'm going to shame myself for this feeling, for feeling sad, and this way at least I won't give up. So this is not true again. You can argue with each of such thoughts, like first analyze what makes you think that shaming yourself is good, and then argue with it. Like for example, here what we can argue, like that if you feel sad and you criticize yourself, it's even worse, and that accepting feelings doesn't mean that you are not doing anything. Like for example, accepting that I feel sad right now doesn't mean you're not treating your depression and doing other things to help yourself. Okay, so this is our second idea, is that analyze what is this motivation behind shame. And some people who were used to getting shamed in their childhood, they might not have any other motivation in their life. So they are used to doing certain things only when they get ashamed of not doing them or something like this. And in this case, you just need to develop different motivations, other motivations, and learn to motivate yourself not by fear and shame, but by other things. Okay. So how can we adapt to this shame and guilt? This is our third part. First of all, we can accept emotions just like facts, just like weather outside, and focus on our goals and just continue moving towards our goals and doing things that we do without trying to shame ourselves or guilt ourselves. Just see emotions as facts. Then second important adaptive idea is that accepting your emotions and not shaming yourself for them doesn't hurt you. It doesn't make these emotions powerful over you. It doesn't make them control you. It doesn't make you more depressed or something like this. Just because you accept how you feel, it doesn't mean that you give up and you don't do anything to change your life. Just because you accept you feel lonely doesn't mean you will stop trying to find some company. So accepting your feelings is not equal at all to inactivity and not taking steps to improve your life. You can accept what is and move towards your goal at the same time. And another adaptation is also sometimes our emotions can reflect real issues and real problems. And instead of feeling ashamed, instead of shaming ourselves about them, we can focus on solving these problems, like use this coping strategy, solving the problem. Because, for example, you feel jealous in your relationship, okay? And instead of shaming yourself for this feeling, saying like, oh, it's so insecure, only I don't know, insecure people feel this way, does it mean I'm not good enough, and so on. Instead, you can recognize, okay, I feel jealous, it means some of my important needs are not met in this relationship. And instead of shaming myself for my feelings, I can go and try to meet those needs. So we focus on solving the problem instead of focusing on, criticizing ourselves. Okay, if you're still not sure, or if you still have some kind of resistance and want to shame yourself, it's normal. We don't change our habits so fast. You can start small. You can start by, for example, you feel ashamed of feeling sad, or you feel ashamed of feeling angry. Make an experiment. Try to accept it and stop criticizing yourself. and pay attention how it feels, what it feels like. Repeat this experiment several times. Maybe also you can write for and against shaming yourself, which, and make your choice like this. You can also write benefits and costs, rewards and losses for shaming yourself or for accepting your emotions. And next time we're going to talk about acceptance. So it will be very useful for you if you have this schema of shame and guilt. And for today, I remind you that emotions are just a fact. You don't have to shame yourself. Shaming yourself is not controlling your emotions or regulating your emotions. You don't need to shame yourself to regulate your emotions. On the contrary, oftentimes when you shame yourself, it leads to disaster. So don't do this. And also, yes, remember that we learn to be ashamed of certain feelings in society, but all emotions are healthy and all emotions are good. We don't have to be ashamed of our emotions. You can feel guilty about actions that you did. Okay, you can feel like, I did not a good action, it doesn't correspond to my values, that's why I feel guilty. Yes, but you don't need to feel guilty about emotions. Okay, so I can feel guilty that I was shouting at someone, but I don't feel guilty for my anger. I can feel guilty that I made a scandal with my partner, but I don't feel guilty for feeling jealous, because feeling jealous is valid, it's reasonable, and it's a normal human feeling, just like anger. And what I'm gonna do is that I'm not gonna shame myself for feeling a certain way. I'm gonna just work on how I react, on my behavioral strategies. Like instead of shouting and making a scandal, I can discuss this with my partner. I can express anger in some other, not violent, not harmful way, and so on and so on. So now I just want you to try new methods of reacting to your emotions instead of guilting and shaming yourself. Guilt and shame make emotional regulation more difficult, more problematic, and in some cases almost impossible, because if you pretend you don't feel a certain way, it's really difficult to regulate how you feel. So, and I encourage you to make different experiments and experiment with not criticizing yourself, but validating your feelings instead. Like, yes, I feel angry, and this is fine, it's normal human feeling. But I can decide how to act. I can choose how to behave. Like, anger doesn't make me behave in only one way. I can choose another way, and I can choose a third way, and I can choose fourth way, and so on and so on. And this is your home task. See you next time. We'll talk about acceptance. Bye bye.